Well, good morning and happy Labor Day to all of you. I'm hoping I will get this video edited and uploaded yet today. I know I've been kind of absent for the last week. Just had a super busy week and those come along and I got a little bit behind, and I want to make sure that my content is beneficial and relevant to things that you want to learn more about. So one of the things I've been doing the past few days is I've been dealing with sourdough bread making. So, as you know, COVID caused a lot of shortages and yeast was one of them. So I think a lot of people decided they wanted to learn how to make bread, or they were previous bread makers and they just decided, okay, I'm going to do this again. Although there was never a bread shortage. I don't know. Or maybe it was because they had more time because they were laid off or they were working from home. But at any rate, that's when I got into making sourdough prior to, but then I really got into it because yeast was not available. So I'm going to show you here my jar of sourdough, and you see the black line here just made with a Sharpie. This was where it was after I fed it this morning, and you can see it's on the rise. So inside, see the bubbles, is the bubbling goodness that is sourdough, and that's what causes the bread to rise without yeast. I had neglected my starter in the refrigerator for about 2 months. I got it out, I fed it. I keep it on a heating mat that you use to start seedlings, and then I cover it with a couple towels, and I just kept peeking and checking, and it kept rising and rising and rising. So I started out with about a quart, that's a half-gallon jar. I knew it was gonna overflow. I put it into the second half-gallon jar, and both of them rose to the top. So for the last 2 days, I've been making all sorts of sourdough, and it does freeze well. I've also shared with neighbors. I've made a plain sourdough, a pumpkin sourdough, which is not sweet but was delicious. And then my favorite was the banana walnut date sourdough, which also does not have a lot of sugar in it. So you really taste the nuts and the bananas, and then get a little tang of sweet occasionally through the bread. This morning, because it's Labor Day, I wanted to cook out, and I thought I'm gonna make some sourdough hamburger buns, and I'll just turn the camera on and bring you along. This recipe is actually from Baking Sense, sense.com. Just a word about making your own sourdough starter. All it is distilled water. You don't want to use city water because of the chlorine. It will kill the growth activity. And for me, I use rye flour. It does not taste like rye bread when you finish. It's just a really good grain to get that activity going and that fermentation started. I can do a series for you on how to make sourdough starter, but what I will say is I learned all of this from the Needy Homesteader on YouTube, and that's Kneady, Needy, like kneading bread, Homesteader. So check out her channel. She has a whole series. I think it's 9 videos for the 9 days it takes to get that starter going. Once you get it going, then you can put it in your refrigerator. You're technically supposed to feed it weekly. My starter was made, gosh, nine months or more ago. And it's lucky if it gets fed once a month, and I've never had a problem with it dying. But I'm not going to tell you how to do it wrong. I'm going to tell you how to do it right. So when you get ready to make any type of bread, one of the things to remember is it's not a quick process. It's not a stir it up, bake it. It has several rise and punch down and kneading cycles. So I have here my KitchenAid mixer, and we are going to start step 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is pour out, and I know you all know how to measure. First I'm going to stir my starter. I forgot to do that. Okay, there you go. So stir in those bubbles, takes it down significantly. And I will tell you, this stuff is like paste. So you want to make sure you wipe it up quickly. If you drip it on stuff, And also your jars. When you're cleaning your jars, they really have to soak a while. So when you measure your starter, you want to be using a liquid measuring cup. So that's one of the real important things and mistakes I think people make with baking, where exactness counts, is that you want to use liquid measuring cups for liquids and dry measuring cups for dry. So we're going to put our 1 cup of starter in our mixer bowl. Trying not to slop it everywhere. But it is important that you do a good job scraping your cup because you want your measurements to be as exact as possible. For my KitchenAid mixer, I also have the attachment that's a scale if you're making bread by weight. And if I'm doing a loaf of bread in the mixer, I do attach the scale. It's also a sifter, and make sure my weight is exact. And you have great results when you do that, and it's the same every time. Okay, so to our starter, we're going to add 1/2 cup of bread flour. So you may think, well, what is bread flour and how is that different from regular flour? Bread flour has more gluten in it. So if you are gluten intolerant, this is not the bread for you, or this is not the recipe for you. So 1/2 cup of flour. And then the final ingredient that we're going to measure out, that I've measured out, is 1/4 cup of water. And even though it doesn't specify, I am using distilled water, and it says warm. So let me pause you for just a moment. I'm gonna warm this up, get the mixer started, and I'll bring you right back. All right, so we're back. I've added the warm water to the bowl. Just going to raise the bowl and let this mix. And the instructions say, let it mix until it forms a thick batter. Then cover the bowl and allow it to sit for 30 to 60 minutes. So I'm going to continue mixing this together. I'm going to allow it to rest for the 30 to 60 minutes, and I'll bring you back. All right, well, it has been about an hour, and let me show you what our dough looks like at this point. You'll notice I have this really cool bowl cover. It's a silicone, stretchy, reusable bowl cover, so it cuts down on your use of disposable plastic type products. So let's see. Oh gosh, that was a loud noise. Let me lift you up here so you can see. We have what in baking terms is called a sponge. So to this, we are going to add 3/4 cup of milk that we've scalded. So scalded just means heated, not burned, not scorched, just heated to near boiling. We melted 2 tablespoons of butter in the hot milk, let it return to room temperature. And now we're ready to put this into our sponge. So, sorry, I forgot I took the dough hook off. The wonders of YouTube. Sometimes you make mistakes. So lift our bowl back up. We're going to turn it on, and I'll try to speak up a little bit. So we're just going to add our milk and butter. So far, not complicated, right? It's more time, I think, than it is complicated. So to this milk, butter, and our sponge, we are going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar and 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I pre-measured it. And then the last thing we're going to do is add an egg. I always crack my eggs into a cup or a bowl rather than to put them directly into your mixture. If you were to happen to get a bad egg or you get shell in it, then you're not fishing out shell or starting over because you just ruined your whole batch. So we have our egg in. Now we're going to add our bread flour. And it's another 1.5 cups. We had already added 1/2 cup. So these are 1/2 cup measures. So we have 1/2, 1, and 1.5. And the reason I'm using 1/2 cups instead of a whole cup is because it won't fit in my canister. So, something to know about the skinny canisters. Great for storage, not as good for putting large measuring cups in. So we're gonna mix this batter until it looks like thick pancake batter. And at that point, I'm gonna turn it up just a touch here. It hasn't even broken the yolk yet. We'll leave the mixer running. We'll add the remaining flour, which is another cup, to total 3 cups. And then we're gonna let it knead. And I'm not going to make you endure the noise of the mixer and watching it go round and round and round. So I'm going to do those steps and I'll bring you back to show you what it looks like. All right, well, welcome back. And we have our beautiful dough here. After it's kneaded for 5 minutes in the mixer. Sorry you're just seeing like half of my face, but I want you to see the bread. So I washed my mixer bowl. I put a little bit of olive oil in there. What you want to do is drop your ball, spin it, turn it, spin it, and turn it so you have a nice coated batch of dough. And then we're going to cover that. This is just a damp tea towel, and I'm going to put it in the oven, which I kicked off, and now I have the light on, so in a warm oven for about 30 minutes, and then I'll bring you back because there's more to do. Well, welcome back, and it's been a few hours since we last looked at the dough. So what I've actually done is, after I put it in my covered bowl in the oven with the oven light on, I flipped the dough per the instructions at a 30-minute increment, another 30-minute increment, a 60-minute increment, and another 60-minute increment. So as I mentioned earlier, not a project that you want to do if you need buns immediately. And I failed to mention too, if you don't have a sourdough starter and you would like to still make your own homemade buns, you can do so with yeast. And oops, we have a little friend here that wants to say hello. Hello from Frankie. Okay, get down, puppy. Okay, so now that we've flipped and turned our dough, I want to show you how much it's arisen, how poofy it is. It's very light and airy. So we're going to just actually, on a very clean counter, I've put a little flour. My hands are clean. We're going to put our dough out. And what we're aiming to do here is divide it into 6 to 8 equal sized pieces that we're going to shape into buns. So I am going to use, this is just a dough cutter. It actually has you can't really see it, but it has like a ruler on it as well, but we don't need to be quite that precise. We just want fairly even cuts here. So I am going to aim for 8. I don't want ginormous buns, so I divided it in 4, and then I'm cutting those 4 in half. And if they look really unequal, then I can pinch off some dough for the end, which I'm doing. And all you want to do is you want to make a nice smooth ball. So you can do that. As you see, I'm like tucking, patting, turning. And this cookie sheet is just lined with parchment paper. So that's what it looks like. And you do want to flatten it a little bit with your hand till it's about an inch thick. So I'm going to continue making my buns and trying to get 8 equal portions. Then it has to rise for 1 more hour, and then finally we'll bake it. So I will bring you back and show you what they look like before we bake them. All right, well, our beautiful buns have risen for the additional hour, and I have to tell you, they smell amazing and they look amazing. I've made a lot of sourdough bread. I have never tried making my own buns, but I had so much sourdough starter that I thought, why not? So I covered it this time just with some plastic wrap, even though I don't like using that. Sometimes it's a necessary evil. If you just use a wet tea towel, it tends to stick to the tea towel, and then you're picking off dough forever. Don't put it in your washer like that. So what I have here is just an egg that I have just fork beaten lightly, and I'm going to brush the tops of my buns here. And they're not exactly the same size, you know, they're not perfection, but they're pretty close. And where they are touching, you know, just like when you bake cookies and the cookies kind of overlap each other, you can just simply take a knife or a spatula and cut those apart. So that's what I'll be doing. So I am brushing these lightly because I don't want to deflate them. They've really got a nice rise to them. They really spread out. I did 8. I think this is a first time for me. On this recipe, I think I would do more like a 12 maybe even. So that might be a little more like a slider size, but in that respect, you could use it as a breakfast sandwich bun. Sourdough bread freezes really well, so my plan is to eat a little, freeze a little. So, and I'm just putting some organic white sesame seeds on top. Certainly not something that you have to do, but I like sesame seeds and I think it adds a nice little nutty taste. So the oven is preheating to 400. And these will go in the oven for 10 to 15 minutes, and I will bring you back to show you the final finished product. Well, our hamburger buns are finished, and I'm just delighted with how they turned out. They're actually quite light and fluffy, and they're very hot. So let me just show you what the inside looks like. So nicely golden brown. They have a nice crust with the egg wash on top. So definitely something that I would make again when I have plenty of time. It's definitely an all-day project. But if you were doing a lot of other kitchen cooking, or there was a lot of downtime in between, just setting a timer and going back to check. So I will drop the recipe below the video if you just click on the little down arrow. And if you found value in the video, if you could please like the video, and I'd love to hear your comments as well. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And there's a little subscribe word below the video. Just click on that and then ring the bell to be notified of new videos. Thanks so much, and I'm gonna go eat a bun and a burger. Have a great, blessed day.